Hello, this is our EFD 645 group case study. My name is Mary Beth Gillen, and I am the Library Media Specialist at Whitesboro Elementary.
Hey, I'm Joseph White. I'm the principal at Anaylsis High School.
Hi, I'm Christy Towns. I'm the principal at Whitesboro Elementary School.
And I'm Julie Tucker. I'm the principal at Southside High School.
So in this case study, there were several problems that were presented. Miss Thurston was the teacher in this case, and she had planned a field trip to go to a park that had many trails and things of that nature to do with students. And close to right before they went on the field trip, she had a new student to move into the school. The student had cerebral palsy. He was pretty mobile, but he had to use crutches to walk around. She was worried about how this may affect him getting on the trail, so she called ahead and talked with Ms. Parsons to make sure there would be accommodations. She assured her that there would be something that could be done for Justin, and that it would work out for him. When they arrived at the park, she noticed there were some gardens, Miss Thurston did, and she mentioned Justin going in those gardens. Miss Parsons pointed out that there was a rule that anyone with limited mobility could not be in the garden or on the trails, but that they would provide Justin with a movie. This ended up being an insufficient accommodation. It was not what Miss Thurston had expected. The facility did not give the accessibility that she had assumed that there would be. So the rules kind of messed up what she thought was going to be a good accommodation for Justin. When you look at the different perspectives of the people involved in this, Justin, if you take in how he may feel, if he is having to watch a movie while everyone else is on a trail or in a garden, he could be ashamed, embarrassed, or upset, and feel like he's isolated. Ms. Parsons, she's kind of looking at this through the park's eye, and she doesn't really think that this situation is a big deal. You know, they've provided accommodations, so this should cover all the bases for them. And then Miss Thurston, she is probably pretty upset because she has called ahead of time to make sure that there was going to be accommodations, and the accommodations that she assumed were going to be in place were not there. So now she is worried that Justin is going to feel isolated or upset.
With this situation, it would be easy for Ms. Thurston, who had felt like she had done everything she could to plan for this field trip. Then when she gets there, realizes that there are no accommodations, it would be very easy for her to be very upset in the heat of the moment, and maybe even possibly say something she shouldn't say to the other teacher in front of students. It's very important for her to make sure that she controls her emotions, and tries to rein that in as much as possible. Because an educator, we all know, if you're a teacher, if you're an administrator, and you get wound up in the heat of the moment, the students are going to respond just like we do, and that's exactly what would have happened in this situation. So it's always important to remember that. Teachable moments, I think there's two teachable moments here for both of these teachers. Even though Ms. Thurston felt like she had done everything she could, just like we do with students, we never need to assume anything. Always double check to make sure that there would be accommodations for a student that was in need. And again, with teachable moments here, I feel like one of the greatest things they could both learn from this is communication, making sure that they're communicating with each other, and that both parties have an understanding of what's going on and what they're looking for. All right, so what are some equitable outcomes now that we're here and dealing with this situation? One of the first things think about, if you're on a trail, that it was not talked about in the case study, but is there possibly access to an ATV or possibly some type of trail cart that we could use to accommodate Justin on the hike with his students? Another thing you could look at doing is have these students review the film with Justin. Again, the biggest fear with this kind of situation is that something's going to happen to make him feel, isolated. So that would be something that you could look at doing, is having the students come in with him, view the video, or have people stay behind. So that kind of creates some options. Again, and everything that we're trying to do here, you're trying to make sure that Justin doesn't feel isolated or excluded from the other students.
Okay, so when we're faced with a situation like this as educators, sometimes, we have to have an immediate response to these types of situations. One of the immediate responses that Ms. Thurston could have given is to give individual attention to the student with a disability and avoid isolation. As we were speaking about before, some of the alternatives, allowing several of the students to view the movie as well. Just avoid separating this child from the other students because he has a disability and cannot perform on the trails as the other students can. Create a group that could maybe view the movie as well with the student, so as not to avoid the isolation, And as a teacher, just be honest in letting the student know, this is not what we were expecting, but we're going to make it okay. And for brainstorming longer term policy and practice adjustments, in other words, to avoid this ever happening again, even though Ms. Thurston felt like she had done the appropriate research, sometimes we have to be very, very thorough and ask more questions. What Ms. Thurston thought was an appropriate accommodation was not the same as Ms. Parsons was expecting. So we can't assume when we're planning for field trips and things like this that the person that we're communicating with understands our thoughts. We cannot assume anything. We have to be very explicit in describing the needs of the student and very explicit also in communicating our expectations for what the child should be able to do in this kind of atmosphere, on this field trip.
Step 7 is crafting a plan of action. And so it's important that you have a field trip policy in place, and that part of that policy would be that you research, these field trips and the locations, and the, accessibility and all the various needs that are there. It's important that you know your students' needs as well. In this particular case, the student, Justin, came in after the field trip had been planned, and it was something that they didn't realize that the student was gonna, have those disabilities. And so when she called and she researched that, she thought that it was good. I think we always have to know our students' needs, communicate with the teachers, and make sure that we are providing the best experience for our students. We answered our discussion questions, and as a group, we felt like question 1 really talked about equitable accommodations, and we felt that this was not an equitable accommodation. We felt like a motorized vehicle or a trail cart, something that would allow Justin to participate on this hike in some way would have been really more of an equitable accommodation there. Question 2 really talked about looking for, should they look for a different field trip or not? Prior to the visit, Ms. Thurston and Ms. Parsons, they should have really verified exactly what those accommodations were. And if they would have known ahead of time that the accommodations would basically limit Justin and, potentially isolate him, I think it would have been fair for them to, choose a different field trip if there couldn't be something provided for him to participate on the hike. Question 3 really focused on, how you handle this and make it a teachable moment. And it is a situation that has to be handled with care. If a teacher approaches the situation by saying, sorry, nobody gets to go on the hike now because Justin can't go, well, then you've created a mess and it's not fair. And so it's really important that you know that you are honest with the students, but that you try to turn it into the best case that you can, scenario that you can. And question 4 talks about exactly what would that best case scenario be. What do you do in that moment? And we really felt like, looking at providing options for the students, whether they choose to watch the film or go on the hike, that makes it more of a choice and not, limitations, not like where you have to because you can't. So we really felt like that was in the moment would be the best case scenario there, to try and make it as equitable as it could be, and give the students a choice, so that then you don't have that isolation going on there. So this is our case analysis. Thank you.